Hi, everyone. I am Lorianne. I am that gal from Milton, Ontario, Canada, and I am with.
I am that guy. I am Roy Miller from Dallas, Texas, and we'd like to welcome you to our Lift Your Story podcast.
So, in today's episode, we're very pleased to have Nancy Zare, and she is a sales psychologist. So, we are going to learn more about what she does. Thank you for being here, Nancy.
Oh, it's my pleasure and honor. Thank you for inviting me.
Okay, Nancy, I've got to ask you, you got to tell me a likability. I love that. So
Oh,
tell
I'm
me what that
glad.
is.
I'm glad you do. A likability is not a word you find in the dictionary. The word likability is, but not a likability. So since I coined it, I will define it for you. It's a skill that raises the perception of feeling or thought within the other person that we're alike. And when you have that skill, which is something you can learn, that makes someone feel, wow, you get me. You're like a mind reader, like you're saying the words that I could say, then the person feels comfortable with you, they relax, and that allows for doing business together. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, is
Absolutely.
that is so? It's really kind of like an instant rapport, right?
You got it. And of course, the name of my business is Rapport Builders. Surprise, surprise. So it is all about building rapport quickly and authentically.
Okay.
That's interesting. I do
So,
remember because I was in the automotive industry as a service advisor, and we did take some training, and that was one of the things that 80% of the people will purchase from you uh, for your likability and your rapport and them feeling that there is that sense of commonality. So that's very interesting. I haven't met anyone who actually, you know, teaches people or helps people to understand that better. So that's really nice to meet you because you're the first one I met. I've read about it, but I haven't met anybody who specifically takes that and that particular
well,
asset.
back in the 70s, what I learned was form. When you meet somebody, form, family, occupation, recreation, then your message. That was how you built rapport.
So I build rapport based upon values. And values are kind of at the core of who we are and what we're about. And it turns out that values cluster into four buckets. And you may be familiar with various personality systems like Myers-Briggs or DISC or Performax. There are over 200 personality systems. And they're based on the concept that there are four temperaments, four personality styles. Well, what I've identified is that there are clusters of values that are characteristic of each of the four styles. And when you speak the language of values, even more so than asking about form, about their family or occupation and so forth, when you speak values, that's when the person feels, wow, we have something in common. I feel comfortable with you and we're alike.
Yeah. It would be kind of like the heartfelt values, right? That
Exactly.
deep interconnection.
Exactly. Now, you're a person who clearly is what I call the number four buying style, for whom connecting on a deep level is the number one value, but it is not the number one value for the other three styles.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's true. It
And
was like
when
they
you
were.
know, oh, sorry.
That's okay. I was just saying it's just like they were saying, like if there's somebody that's very reserved and you're really exuberant, you're gonna throw them completely off because they don't want to deal with someone like that. Yeah.
Exactly. There are other styles that are not as forthcoming and do not want to talk on a deep, intimate way about their personal stuff. And consequently, you who are enthusiastic and warm and gushy, no, it just doesn't work. And so again, what I teach is to identify the other person's style because it's based on the platinum rule. Treat others the way they want to be treated, not the way I want to be treated. And if they don't want to have that warm stuff, then you want to be more reserved, more formal, more mannerly, or whatever it is that suits the occasion.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, like if you're that type person, a person that's analytical that wants numbers, figures, hard data, you're not going to connect.
No, they are not touchy-feely. And so even though, I can tell, Roy, what a warm, engaging person you are, but that person who is very analytical, as you said, they really want logic and they're not into emotionality. So by being able to identify that, then a better way to communicate than simply to, start talking chit chat with them.
Yeah, yeah. So not necessarily just being yourself, it's not going to work.
Right. So right.
I
So
kind
the
of joke because,
likability,
sorry, I was gonna say, I
so
kind
the
of joke
like,
because, go ahead.
so the likability system has 5 steps, and those 5 steps are to identify these 4 styles, to know your own style, because we tend to communicate from our own dominant style, and it has its pluses and minuses. Third is to figure out the other person's style and to do so in a quick minute. The fourth is to shift your communication to match the other person's style based on values. Not a monkey see, monkey do. And then finally, the fifth one is you need to rein in the parts in your own style that rub people the wrong way.
Yeah. So it's not the mirror and match.
Not at all. And this is the reason why I think it's very important, why I'm excited about the likability system, because I do think that it gives people a different way to communicate, one that's really much more authentic.
Yeah. I mean, it makes perfect sense if you think about it. But it's, as far as I know, I've never heard it put that way before.
Well, that is my unique contribution, is I have taken these 4 styles and I'm looking through the lens of sales, and I'm taking a look at what is it I need to do to connect quickly and authentically with my prospect in a way that puts them at ease, not artificially, but in a genuine way that puts them at ease and lowers sales resistance, builds trust quickly, and therefore opens the door to doing business together. And that's exactly what the likability system is all about.
Now, have you done training like for a group of people, like say corporate or like a product or whatever?
Yes, I work with people individually. I've also trained groups of different people, and I've trained groups from the same company.
So when you're doing a group setting, say a group of say 20 people, roughly what's the average of the different 4 people in that group?
That's a great question. Assuming that somehow we're, I don't know, equally divided, which we're not, because it turns out that there are geographical differences. Here in the East Coast, in the greater Boston area where I live, we have a dominance of that analytical style. And that's because higher education is one of our main industries. Hence, we tend to attract more people from that style. But in the overall population, they're only about 18%. And so in the Midwest, you're actually not going to find a lot of them. And then the style that is the fast, decisive, quick decision maker, for whom most of the marketing is geared, that style is about 25%. The style, again, that is the style that's warm and friendly and it connects with people, that too is about 25%. And so the 33% is, I think, is what's left, is the style that's much more mannerly, much more ordered, and cares about following a process.
Step by step type people. Okay.
Wow.
Okay. That's it. That's a pretty wide swing. It's pretty interesting at that, how much the 4 differs.
They do. And again, it's values. But here's what's very important. We are a combination of all 4 styles, just in a different order and a different amount. And so even though, you may feel like, wow, I'm not that logical and I'm not really all that numbers oriented, there's a time in your life and, a situation where, yes, you are, right?
Do you
And
believe, sorry,
go ahead.
I have a question. Do you believe, because I was married for 15 years and I tended to be more of the, I had my first business at 24, was a literary agency, and I really went with the seat of my pants. I mean, I did have my accounting and I knew all of that stuff, but then my ex-husband was very analytical and not very emotional. And I tended to take on, so that at the end of the 15 years before I divorced him, like I've come back to a little bit more of me again, but it was almost as if I was adjusting to his style. And it's good though, because I learned that part of it so that when I'm in front of somebody, I have that capability of adjusting to that type of person. But it wasn't really me. But do you find that people, when they are with somebody, will tend to, and he took on some of mine. I mean, he couldn't stand art, he couldn't stand opera, and all of a sudden he got all into it. So I mean, that's like, there was a nice mixture there. But do you find that? Do you find that they tend to grow?
So what I have found is that opposites do attract. Hence, we tend to choose a partner either in business or in marriage who has different characteristics, different values than we have. And the best relationships are when you draw upon each other's differences, honor them and respect them, and hence can use them to everyone's advantage. I grew up in a family where my parents were opposites, but unfortunately that became a measure for clashing, and they had very stormy marital relationship. I was the last child, only girl, and it was in my heart to try to help them. And so, believe it or not, I started practicing psychology when I was like 8 or 9 years old, trying to help my parents get along. And it was just, and I now, looking back as an adult, I realize it's because they had very different styles. And what I found interesting is that they never seemed to catch on to each other's language, whereas I, the child, did. And I definitely understood what my dad was requesting of my mom. He was much more of the orderly, methodical, do it by the rules type person. And my mother was this free spirit, no rules, let's have everything just, enjoy life to the fullest. And I could understand both of their languages, and yet they couldn't understand each other. I interpreted.
Wow.
It's
That's
funny, it's
amazing.
funny you mentioned that because I worked with a guy off and on for 30 years. Him and his wife were so opposite. It was like, I mean, how did you guys ever get together? But they've been married probably 40 years. They've got 5 kids. They work together in their business. I mean, it works for them. But I swear, if you met them, you think, I said, oh yeah, they're married. You'd go, there's no way. I mean, they were just so opposite. But they've had a good, successful marriage, raised 5 kids. I mean, so.
Yeah, so to answer your question, Lorianne, yes, you definitely can take on, again, these are values, so you can shift yourself to be in concert with the other person. But as you said, now that you're no longer together, maybe you're returning back to who you are, at your core.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is. So, so tell me about education into edutainment.
Yes, well, of course, your audience is now listening to a podcast, so they visually cannot see. But when I do a presentation, training, webinars, whatever, I wear 4 large colored hats, and I am entertaining. I put on a display of these 4 buying styles, the 4 different buyers and their values, so that it kind of helps them understand in a more visual, concrete way what these people are like.
Okay, that's interesting. I can just see that. Here's my blue hat. Here's my green hat.
You got it. Red and gold. Those are the 4 colors: blue, green, gold, and red. Mhm.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
what would you say the primary signs of what a person is? I don't want to give away all of it, but like if I know that, somebody walks out, I'm a handwriting analyst. So when people used to sign their work order, I could see what their character was right away. So I knew how to deal with them. I knew if they were detailed. So I had a heads up that they didn't know about. But for people who don't have that, you know, when you're talking to someone, I know that you can pick up, but some people don't pick up. I have seen salespeople where they don't stop and you're going, don't you get it? That person won't listen to you if you don't change your mannerisms. So what would you say would be some of the first signs that you're really messing up or something like that?
I am so delighted about what you do because of the fact when I was younger, I did study graphology and I was fascinated by what you could learn about somebody's personality by looking at their writing. So you're spot on. I use 6 different clues to help my clients figure out what somebody's style is, how someone talks, how they look, they appear, they dress, their mannerisms, their writing. And this would include text messages and emails, as well as posts on social media, which is the next category, social media. And finally, how they decorate their home or their office. So those are the 6 clues that I use.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
And we do it all within a minute because you can very quickly nowadays, if you're at a physical networking group, you can scan the room. I've gone with clients and I've helped them scan the room, and we can quickly point out and pick out the 4 different styles that are represented in the group by how they're dressed and their mannerisms. If you're on the phone or on a call like this, you can listen to their vocal qualities. Inflection, speed, and volume are the 3 characteristics that will help you identify their style. And then again, how they write. And it is, I'm not meeting now graphology, but I am meeting whether they write in complete sentences, bullets, you know, are they flowery again, or are they just straight to the point? And again, those are different ways you can figure out what their style is.
Yeah, it's interesting because people are expressive through their social media in their own way. True.
That's right. That's right. And the way we are in one part of our life is usually how we show up in other parts of our life. Hence, that's why you can tell what somebody's style is, or at least have a good operational guess as to what somebody's style is. And then when you interact with them, you can modify your guess based upon your actual conversation.
Yeah. So if your perception is this, and you start talking to that person, you realize, oh, I'm way off here. I need to switch over to this. This person's not this, he's this, right?
Well, and you know what happens, Roy, is that when you and I first meet, we may be in our social mode. But then when I'm asking you to make a decision about perhaps working with me, now you're going to put on your business hat, your decision-making hat, and as a result, you may shift into a different mode. And again, if I am listening to your tone of voice, if I'm watching your body language, I will see that shift, and then I will know you're now in a different style. Hence, I can also shift with you.
Okay.
That's very true too, because I also know I had, you know, in being in sales, really what it was, you find that there's some people too, they'll come up and they'll be very almost crass. I mean, almost, you know, like, but then you can turn it around as well. I find just understanding, you know, that person probably had a bad day, but you can pick up on the fact that they're really, that's not the real them. And then just by listening, understanding, and saying, hey, I can do this for you, a little extra, all of a sudden they just become the kindest, biggest, mushy marshmallows in the world. Like, so that's really key to be able to do that, really. Not to automatically assume that if somebody comes up with a grumpy face, that they might be in that one category. So yeah.
Well,
That's neat. I just love this because this psychology is just so fascinating to me. And I just think it's great that you teach it. You must be fun to watch.
I did a demonstration for a group last week, a 10-minute demonstration, which somebody said, here's a prospect that I'm interested in working with. And so far I've been unable to, get him as a client. And so what I did is I looked him up on social media. I went to LinkedIn first, Then he had a profile. It was fairly limited. Went to Facebook. He had no profile on Facebook. And but then I went to the website, and based upon what I saw on LinkedIn and the website, I said, well, he is the number 6 orderly, mannerly buyer. And then I told the person I was speaking with, here's what you need to do in order to develop a relationship. And he said, wow, you are spot on, because up to now, that's exactly how this guy has behaved.
Oh, great. But one thing you mentioned a while ago, Lorianne, is you said listening to that person. So, and unfortunately, a lot of us are just waiting for our next moment to talk. We're not paying attention. Really, it's like, okay, hurry up so I can say what I want to say, rather than actually listen to what they have to say. I mean, taking it in. So, and I think most people suffer from that. Is not really listening, just waiting for their opportunity to respond.
You're so right. And, we've heard the old adage that God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth to be used in that proportion. So you're spot on.
I like that saying.
But yeah, I mean, everybody's different, but I mean, I think the key is to be able to talk with that person and see what that difference is, and then how to connect with that difference.
Yes. And for those of us who are people persons, we're fascinated, we're curious to meet and get to know other people. The other 3 styles, have less of a desire that way. But again, likability is a skill that you can learn, that can raise the feeling within the other person of being alike. Hence, I feel comfortable to do business with you.
Yeah. Well, I know in my career, a lot of the people just give me the bottom line.
Yeah.
Okay, just what's the bottom line? What's the bottom line? How much is it going to cost me? How long is it going to take to get it? And so I dealt with a lot of people, and honestly, I was kind of the same way with other people. I mean, it's just because I'm in a hurry. Hey, I don't care. Just what do you need? I'll take care of it. Just tell me what you need. I'll take care of it. I don't need the history. What do you need? So yeah, I get it. And I'm with kind of the analytical type at work. I'll need the numbers, the facts, the figures.
It is a bit frustrating. Yeah, sorry. It is a bit frustrating though, because a lot of these things nowadays you're speaking to get down to the brass tacks. I want to know how much it is. Then I could tell you if I'm really interested, if I even have the budget to do or whatever. But you find a lot of these webinars or whatever you're going on, they go, you have to stay to the end. So you're there for an hour, and I don't agree with it personally. I would rather say, okay, this is it. But if you stick with us, we might be able to do something to help you, and just listen to what we have to say. Okay, now that I have the option, and I don't like feeling that. I think a lot of people feel that way, and yet it's still the top way of selling things is by having those webinars that they talk for an hour before they get to the bottom line. How do you feel about that?
It turns out that, again, the majority of marketing efforts seem to be directed more toward the number 2 buyer. The number 2, by the way, the reasons I use numbers for the buyers represents the number of contacts needed before somebody can make a buying decision. So the number 2 needs only 1 or 2 contacts. The number 4 needs about 2 to 3 plus 1. The number 6 needs 5 to 7, and the number 8 needs 8 to infinity. And so that 1 to 2 person is where most of the marketing efforts are for what we call the low-hanging fruit, the person who can decide right away. And usually the language is all about immediacy and urgency and deadlines and limitations and fear of missing out. And it's the same, that is the marketing strategy for the number 2. And by the way, for the number 2 buyer, that is the right strategy. But for the other 3 buyers, you are so far off base, and it is annoying to them and upsetting, and especially like to the number 8 buyer, they are at the point where they will refuse to do business with you because they feel so upset by that approach.
Interesting.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. But not everybody's just a quick decision maker. I mean,
Wow.
there are those people that they can hear a little bit, boom. Yeah, I want it. No, I don't want to get out of here. You know, I,
The challenge for those of us who are in sales is that people buy on value. They don't really buy on the actual number cost. And yes, everything has a certain dollar value attached to it, but people will find the dollars if they think the value is there. So that's why there's a reluctance to tell you what the bottom line is until you know the value, because once you are sold on the value, you're willing to go and find the way to get it.
yeah. It's the what's in it for me. That question's got to be answered.
Yes.
What's in it for me?
Mhm.
And I agree with that's okay. I just find that sometimes the time frame of it is just so long. I just feel that if you can't really give me the value within a half hour, I don't, that's me though. I mean,
Well, it's interesting you should say that, Lorianne, because I'm a professional speaker, and the hardest talk to give is one that's short. It's not long. The long ones, you can take lots of time and meander and talk stories and, and get to your point eventually. But the hardest speech to give is one that's very short. I was recently challenged. I gave a TED talk and at TEDx. It's not an official TED talk.
Yeah.
And it was only to be 10 minutes. And I tell you, I worked harder over that 10-minute conversation, that 10-minute presentation than anything I've ever done.
People say
Right.
that you get whatever time limit it is, say 10 minutes, not 9 minutes and 30 seconds, not 10:05, 10 minutes. It has to be 10 minutes. That's why I've always heard about those talks.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, it's very hard. In fact, I think that's why elevator pitches that are anywhere from 15 to 30 to maybe 60 seconds, but really they're more like 15 seconds. To craft a good elevator message, it is a real skill. And again, it goes back to what is the value proposition, and am I communicating it in a way that's going to connect with my ideal buyer? And your ideal buyer is not always 2, 4, 6, and 8. Maybe it's just the number 6, or maybe it's just the number 8. Hence, you have to have a different message.
yeah. And I know, in Lorianne, what you're talking about webinars, they spend their time value stacking.
yeah,
That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
It does it. It's more value, 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 value. Then they come to the end. So, but Nancy, so how can our listeners reach out to you?
So I have a website. It's Rapport Builders. I spell it with a Z at the end of builders. So Rapport, RAPPORT, BUILDERZ.com, rapportbuilders.com. You're welcome to go there, and there are freebies available, including the 4 magical questions and what I call the Likability Scorecard, where you can learn about what your style is as a buyer and a seller. I also have a new book that just came out called Compelling Selling. And if you go on Amazon, it's $15. But if you go to rapportbuilders.com/book/book, you can get an autographed copy for just 10.
Oh, wow. Great.
very nice.
Yeah. Heck yeah. Okay.
Been
Did you have
fantastic.
anything, Lorianne? Did you have anything else?
I was just gonna say, this is just so excited. I just love this type of conversation because it just fascinates me. So
And vice versa. I could be talking to you guys for hours.
thank you.
Well, it was great having you with us. Time flew by, and I mean, I learned a lot. A lot more than I honestly expected to tell you the truth. So
Absolutely.
appreciate you taking your time to come on with us, Nancy. And probably down the road, we're going to ask you to come back.
Oh, I'd love to do that. And
you
to
know,
all the listeners out there, as well as to Lorianne and to Roy, to your sales success.
Beautiful.
Right.
And Last thing I'm going to say is I do highly recommend this because I do know that it works. So Nancy, that's just wonderful. So reach out to Nancy if you're looking for some really good sales tips. These are definitely them.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Have a great day,
All right,
everybody.
Nancy, thank you for being with us. It was a
Bye-bye.
pleasure to meet you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Bye-bye.